Hello and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. And as always, we invite you to join the discussion on Twitter, #CTRLive, and look for the show also as #security. Today's topic is evaluating security intelligence and analytics solutions. And our guests for today's show are Gary Eppinger, who's a Global Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer, and Privacy Officer for Carnival Corporation. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Very good, sir. Thank you. And we also have Jonathan Klein, who is Chief Information Security Officer with Broadridge Financial Solutions. So how are you, John, here?
Good, Sanjog. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, very good. Thank you. It's an honor to have both of you on the show. Now, we are looking at the newer age of business and the way we are living our lives, and security is becoming very important for us. In fact, we are keeping that as top of our mind and trying to find strategies. Challenges are there, and we also find that it is not a matter of if, but when we will get hacked. So do we have to always working on the prevention strategies better than or more than becoming better at responding to the incidents that happen? If that's the case, or in either case, should we be relying or banking on security intelligence and analytics solutions that are being proposed? So goal here is to challenge in a healthy way as a healthy skeptic that what would it take for us to be feeling secure, and how much the tools, technologies, policies, and processes will help us, and where do we go with this security intelligence and analytics solutions? So that's as a background. So as a first question, I'll start with you, Gary. We are looking at lot of incidents happening over the years, and media is doing a fantastic job of exposing, but also sometimes in a way creating paranoia. What do you think is truly the state of vulnerability we have today?
Yeah, so when I think about vulnerability today, it's absolutely very critical and changing, right? So we've had security incidents, we have security exposures for the last 30 plus years where I've been in this space. However, there's a lot more visibility from the C-suite all the way down to the guy that's pushing a broom in the lobby. So it's not that the issues have grown and got bigger, but they surely have more highlights for those particular incidents, as well as you think about the bad guys today. They are way more organized than they've been in the past. They're more focused on the commerce side of the equation. We started off where it was just taking a heel, right? And so how can I take a company's system down? Now they're highly motivated to get revenue from that transaction and or get market share potentially from impacting individual companies. So we shouldn't be paranoid, but we absolutely need to be concerned.
So, John, when you look at this as the state of security that is reported by Gary, where do you think our investment should be? Because I've spoken to quite a few CISOs, and there is always two schools of thought. A percentage of them say we should focus more on prevention. Another is to say, okay, I do not know if there's a way for us to prevent this at all, or completely. So might as well focus on responding to threats effectively. Where do you think the balance is?
I think it's going to have to be a blended approach. I agree with the comments that we're not going to prevent everything. And I don't think it's economically feasible. To Gary's point, there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there. And while we used to deal with what we called scripted kiddies in the past, these guys are smart, they're well-funded, and they have a lot of vulnerabilities to choose from. So blending our approach with both prevent and not only just detect, but detect and quickly contain is really the approach that we're going to have to take going forward.
Now, if you are to look at, Gary, set of solutions that we may have tried, or maybe beyond solutions, the strategies, what is it that you would say would be a plausible and a practical strategy in today's day and age to prevent such incidents from happening? And if they do happen, then respond to them. What's your overarching mantra, if you will?
Yeah, so overarching, I kind of look at it absolutely from that balanced approach, right? So you need to be able to detect early, and we'll talk a little more about analytics, but if the more analytics, that you're able to use, it gives you an opportunity to focus in on areas that you may be invisible to you. The tough part of this job, and the thing that we've seen explode over time. If you think about the number of connections that we have into our environments today, right? There was a time when you could count on a couple hundred connections coming in, right? Either from vendors or from customers. Now it's millions or billions of connections coming in. So how do I determine where do I need to focus from leveraging analytics within that balanced approach? We will never be able to prevent everything, but how do I zero in on the most important, highest risk items that I need to be able to react appropriately to?
Now, if you are to look at, John, once again, if you had to take the top deployments of solutions that you may have made, and where do you see hindsight 2020, which has given you the best bang for the buck?
It's an interesting question. I don't think there's been any one tool that was an absolute game changer. It's really been a blending of a number of different tools, because you're just not going to find that one solution that's going to fix everything or even fix a bulk of things. I'd say one that would probably stand out would be data loss prevention, where not necessarily that it was stopping everything, but the tool raised awareness for the need to protect information and to make sure certain kinds of information didn't leave the firm. So the tool wasn't in itself the game changer, but the awareness to management was the game-changing aspect.
So, Gary, if you are looking at, and based on John's response that there is not one tool or one strategy, but if you do not have a clear mapping between the strategy that you had, the tactics that you thought of deploying and corresponding solution set, it would be a shotgun approach to say, what do you kill, or throw spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks?
Yeah,
How do you go about handling it better?
Yeah, I think you absolutely have to go after it with a strategy based on a risk-based approach. So instead of using the shotgun approach, how do you leverage data to align to your strategy to say what you focus on? As we alluded to earlier, it's not about the biggest walls. So it's no longer who can build the biggest walls that the bad guys can't get over. If there's a focus, if there's a targeted, if there's a highly motivated organization, country, and or individual, they may and will find a way over. And we've started a conversation in our company, and you're talking to a guy that used to talk about keeping the bad guys out, and now it's not if you get compromised, it's when you get compromised. Now, what are you going to do once you get compromised? And more importantly, or as importantly, how do you know you've been compromised? And then so you can react to it as quick as possible. Unfortunately, today, so many companies that are getting compromised don't find out until a week or a month or 6 months down the road. And they usually find out by a customer or a federal agency that calls them on the phone and say, you've been compromised. So it's a tough scenario.
So we have discussed these challenges that you're talking about, which is advanced persistent threat. So we are looking at those challenges. People may be either directly impacted with these APTs, or they could be the source, because they could be an HVAC provider or another supplier to a large financial services firm, and they could become the source through which, or a conduit through which one may get impacted, hacked. So John, if you were to look at this whole scenario, this ecosystem, would you think that the security intelligence that we need to garner, it has to only be the responsibility of the final impacted entity, or this has to be a value chain driven security intelligence? Because they may not directly intrude through your door. They may come through another supplier's door.
Yeah, it's got to follow the entire chain. It can't be just the endpoint that has the security intelligence. There has to be information sharing amongst the suppliers. Because if one of my suppliers is seeing something, I certainly want them to tell me so that I am making sure I have the proper defenses in place to defend against it. Without it, we get caught off guard, like a Target got caught off guard where, they were hacked through their HVAC provider. Information sharing is going to be very important, and it's not going to just be out of tools. It's got to be conversations that CISOs have with one another, conversations CISOs have with law enforcement. Sometimes it's just good old-fashioned legwork. Give you an example of a threat our company faced a couple of years ago, and we didn't use fancy intelligence tool. with good old legwork of searching social media, YouTube and Twitter and Facebook to find the threat and then to be able to mitigate the threat.
Now, would you call yourself lucky that when you went about looking through social media, it could have been seen as a wild goose chase by someone if you had not found anything? So would you call yourself lucky? Because not every time things will be as explicitly stated out in open, which you can just do a Google search and get.
I wouldn't say lucky is the right term. I think we looked at other channels outside of looking at a security intelligence dashboard. Because those tools, they do have limitations. They look at things that are already out there. They don't look at people talking. And so you're looking at multiple sources and you're sharing that information with your vendors, with your clients, so that they're well aware of the threats that are coming and have a chance to defend themselves against them.
So the key phrase, and we'll take a quick break and we'll be coming back, but I wanted to lay the groundwork. So the key here is security intelligence. Now that's the intelligence you want to get through some source. It could be a set of tools or other form of organizational changes or organizational strengths that you may be able to harness. What is the source of security intelligence and where do we stand with respect to that today? What's the current state of security intelligence that you're able to get before the event proactively and even after the fact so that you can basically track the problem or respond to a problem? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back and explore.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network. HP is proud to sponsor this program. Find out how the HP as a service solution for SAP HANA can help you gain instant, impactful business results without capital investment by logging on to HP.com. Transform information into intelligence and a competitive advantage with a full spectrum of SAP HANA products and services from HP, a global SAP hosting partner. When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network. You are listening to CIO Talk Radio with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free at 1-866-472-5790. That number again is 1-866-472-5790. Now, back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So, Gary, I'll start with you. So whether it is about preventing a security breach or responding to one, perhaps some sort of security intelligence and analytics has to be performed. It may come from a set of tools or a duct tape and shoestring based processes or Excel spreadsheets that you may create yourself. But what's your fundamental vision of a set of solution or a solution for an organization that will work effectively?
Yeah, so when I think about solutions, it's 3 different paths that I consider, and which aligns with our strategy. It's all about people, process, and technology. So if you think about the cyberspace today and how all of the mechanisms and tools and processes and things that we put in place to help prevent incidents from happening, and then when it happens, give us visibility so we can react. It's how do we balance it from a people? So people is how do we educate our employees, how do we educate our consumers that are using our tools and products and services, the processes that our employees use to leverage the systems that deliver services for our customers, and then the technology, right? So the technology could be the specific analytical tool, or that analytics can come from conversations with other CIOs, can be conversations with our vendor community, but it's for the federal government. So it's a combination of all of those that give you rich data that can be leveraged. And it doesn't necessarily come from one, it could come from any one of those 3.
So, John, when you have tried to deploy or you've even envisioned security intelligence and analytics type of solutions, the culture, the people, process, and technology that Gary mentioned, what were the lessons learned along the way? And do you think you are at a point where you say, okay, I've got already a good mix, which I could use in a most predictable manner to tame this beast?
I think it's still in the learning phase, right? Security, intelligence, and analytic tools are still very new. They're very limited. They focus very heavily on things that are out there. So they look for malware that's running around the internet. They look for web pages that are serving up ill content. They look for spammers. They do very little in talking to folks on the dark web. They don't do a lot of putting in that human intelligence. But I think the biggest shortfall is that they don't understand your business, right? So you could be getting a lot of data, but unless it's actually meaningful data that impacts your business, it's not really actionable data. And I think that's where the shortcomings are with security intelligence and analytic solutions. So I haven't gone in with both feet yet to purchase an analytic solution. I'm looking at various ones. I'm looking at outsourced services as well as in-source services. I still rely very heavily on members of my team actually going out and looking for threats. I do work very closely with our users and make sure they understand their responsibilities on security so that they are not creating additional vulnerabilities. But to really jump in full force of any good security intelligence analytics solution, I just don't really see the value yet until we're able to come up with a solution that really can understand my business and give me quick, actionable intelligence without having to invest heavily in people.
It's interesting you bring up this point about actionable intelligence. So Gary, if I have a good data crunching tool, or even my own people are somehow churning out data using whatever primitive methods they may have, or the modern methods. But then it's a last mile challenge. It's basically coming down to what do I do with that data? How do I interpret it into something actionable, which is also an intelligent and a creative way to approach a problem? Do you think suddenly we are expecting our own people, the security leaders who have a different set of competencies and skills developed over the years, to convert into a data scientist?
Yeah, what a great question. I would probably answer that question very differently 10 years ago than I will today. I would say absolutely, I don't believe our security engineers will be data analysts and data scientists. However, there's skill sets, there's tools, there's techniques that gives them more valuable data that they can leverage, as John just alluded to do their job better. So they can focus in on a specific area because they know the business way better than anybody else. And they know what's important. They know the risk tolerance of the business, and they know the data flows. We've started down this path of using some data analytics in our environment from a marketing and from a consumer perspective. And when we jumped into that space, it allowed us visibility into places that we hadn't thought about in the past. And so I think of it very similarly from a security perspective. This will give us visibility into things that we may not have visibility to today. So we've put in tools in our environment that allowed us to start to focus on things that we didn't know was actually going on as part of normal day-to-day process that was, beneath the sheets, but allowed us to now have greater conversations with our business partners around business practices that may have been okay in the past, but no longer okay as we think about increasing the level of security, increasing the level of control in our environment, so allow us to drive business processes in a more secure manner.
John, do you think we have the necessary academy, if you will, which will churn out better security leaders who can think beyond, not security leaders per se, but security workers who would have that overarching business insight coupled with understanding of what security works, and further flavored with the data science so that they can really produce something which the whole organization can react to, invest towards, and get the benefits from?
I think we're churning out some, but I don't think we're churning out enough. I'm finding it, and I'm sure Gary's probably having the same problems, just finding good, qualified security people. I think we keep just feeling from each other. I think that it's really not a matter of having good security people and data scientists, but reducing the footprint of the data that we're actually looking at. I'll go back to the history of it all. In the late 90s, intrusion detection systems came out. And I remember I was at a client and gung-ho, I installed it. I got everything configured, and I started looking at the data, and I was seeing like all these incidents popping up, and I was contacting people. Hey, I'm seeing unusual activity from you. What is this? Or what, can you please stop it? And what I found out after a couple of weeks was that was all I was doing, was spending 8 hours a day going through intrusion detection log and tracking down incidents and not getting any of my other work done. And we tried to come out. The next evolution was security incident and event management. And we shrunk it down a little bit, but then the amount of data grew, and we ran into the same problem. And now we have big data, security analytic, and we have data scientists, and we try to squeeze it down further, but the data has grown so large that it's become an unmanageable problem again. And I think until we're able to break that cycle and find ways to reduce the footprint of the data that we have to actually look at, so that by the time people like Gary and I get this information, it's true actionable items that we need to be worried about and go execute on, as opposed to the myriad of false positives that keep popping up. And I think that's when the game finally changes. And I haven't seen it arrive yet. I don't think any of the vendors get it yet. I've been looking for it for a couple of years. Until they do, and until they're able to help us, I think we'll all continue to struggle with this problem. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that comment. And you've seen more and more convergence from vendors. So on the software side, where they've been acquiring each other, you've also seen hardware companies start to get into the software space from a security side. But as far as that enterprise solution that's truly going to solve this problem, we're moving in the right direction, but we're still far away from having the right solution out there.
If I were to go ahead and evaluate what's available today in terms of solutions and how does it match back to what we are attempting to do, is that like a one-size-fit-all type of solutions available, or is there some customization possible? Gary?
Yeah, no, there's absolutely a necessity for optimization and customization, right? There won't be a one-size-fits-all, because you think about the mere differences between the banking industry and insurance industry and the cruise space, as an example. Dramatically different business processes, right, which drives a different configuration that's going to be needed from company to company. So what's important for us will be dramatically different than a bank. So you think about some of the things that we've seen some success, and I would say some early success in the banking space. So if I go to use my credit card in 3 different states within 15 minutes of apart, my phone rings. And they say, geez, Mr. Eppinger, we've seen some transactions on your account that doesn't meet your profile. And in fact, it's impossible for you to be using it in 3 different states at a time. So we stopped them. So that's an example where they've took a lot of data to be able to focus into some activity, reactive mode, but focus into some activities that just didn't make sense, and they could stop it and prohibit it from going through. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because everything was done batch and everything was done after the fact, those transactions would have been through before somebody knows them as being an issue.
So let's look at security intelligence and analytics solutions which are being offered. And we will not take names so that we make sure we are objective in our evaluation. What do you think is the level at which they are being operated? Is it like a one science, they somehow sniff through all the different traffic on your network and perhaps match it up to some heuristics engine where they are collecting data of the type of breaches and signatures and sending it back? It's like would you call this like an antivirus on steroids? Is that what it is, John?
I don't think I'd call it an antivirus on steroids. Look, there's vendors out there that have solutions that focus very heavily on data collection from various intrusion devices, various firewalls that are out there, so that they're seeing traffic that's already out there, and then telling the rest of the world, hey, we're seeing this traffic. You have other companies that are going out and going through the dark web, and they're actually gathering human intelligence by talking or infiltrating these underground groups to get a sense of what's going on and providing intelligence that way. What we haven't done is taken those 2 different kinds of solutions and married them together. How do we take what's out there and tie it to a particular group's campaign and understand what their focus is, so that we can actually look at, okay, what industry are they targeting? How are they trying to target that industry? So that we're not just chasing everything. And that's the problem, is we're getting so much data, we're chasing everything.
When you say that we're getting so much, you go ahead.
As I said, the vendors are trying to do everything for everybody because they can't just build a box for a particular industry. So the struggle that you face as a customer when you get one of these solutions is, how do I tailor it down and configure it? And what's my strategy around that to be able to get reasonable data out of it so that I'm not just getting inundated with a lot of unnecessary events, but at the same time, I'm getting some value. And that falls now back to I don't have the human capital to be able to do that effectively. And we all struggle with it.
So let's take a quick break. So when we come back, John, I'll come back to you on this one because you interestingly mentioned that the domain knowledge is very important for a security solution to be effective. Typically, for the rest of the world, security has mostly been, what does this mean as a technology or even in terms of risk? And at risk level, yes, you'd have to understand the domain. But when you're trying to use a tool or a service, would they necessarily be able to find the level of domain knowledge or be able to utilize when they're not embedded in the organization? Is it asking for too much from a third-party provider and instead take the responsibility ourselves? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network. HP is proud to sponsor this program. Find out how the HP as a service solution for SAP HANA can help you gain instant, impactful business results without capital investment by logging on to HP.com. Transform information into intelligence and a competitive advantage with a full spectrum of SAP HANA products and services from HP, a global SAP hosting partner. Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business. You are listening to CIO Talk Radio with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free at 1-866-472-5790. That number again is 1-866-472-5790. Now, back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So we're talking about domain knowledge here, or someone who really lives the business. Now, we know practically every CISO and their team has expressed this challenge where the business doesn't really open up and tells them what do they really want, what their crown jewels are. And the security workers are not truly as embedded in the business. And so how do we get this whole domain knowledge be offered to a third-party provider, even to our own people, for them to be effective?
But I think that the barriers to providing, that breakdown of the barriers between the business and security in the last several years has definitely been dropping, and we're getting that domain knowledge. The challenge we have is a lot of our organizations aren't big enough to be able to properly staff up a group with those people with the domain knowledge to be able to effectively use these analytic solutions. There's 24/7 solutions. Hackers don't wait till business hours to try to break in. They typically try to break in your overnight hours. So for anything to be effective, it's got to be 24/7, which means somebody's looking at it 24/7. Last I checked, I know companies are trying to get us to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's not really realistic. So we have to hire enough people to be able to get that adequate coverage. It's expensive. A large organization, they can probably do it. Medium-sized companies, smaller companies, there's no way it scales. And so what you have out there, the opportunity for these managed security service providers. They've been out there for years. I used to, years ago, sell managed security services. It's a very good play in the monitoring space. So the MSSPs can build up those analytic functions, and then you get them to provide you 3 or 4 analysts who are assigned to your account that sit down with you, learn your business, at least learn enough of your business so that when they're sifting through data, they're not giving you things that are just completely immaterial to you. They're giving you things that, yes, you're concerned about this particular threat pertains to you. And that's where this whole industry needs to go for security intelligence and analytics to be effective for everyone. I don't have the deep pockets of the big banks out there to go and build all that myself. It's just not very cost effective. So I want an MSSP to do that for me. And I think it's realistic for them to have those kinds of solutions with that domain knowledge.
So Gary, interestingly, when you invite procurement to get an MSP or MSSP here to deliver services, they to get sharp with their knives, and they basically, the vendor wants to get sharp with their knives and the procurement wants to get sharp with their pencils to bring the cost down. And now on the other hand, you want these people to really embed themselves in the business, learn all the business knowledge, and then become much better than you could ever be yourself. Do you think this is, first of all, the way we are structured to acquire services of any third party and the way we incent them? Is there a model that would realistically work based on what John is proposing? It's amazing if that can be done. It will be awesome if it can be done. But what do you do with the costs and other challenges with respect to us controlling the cost and how any services like this is procured?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a tough dilemma, right? So if you think of it from a company perspective, they want the most service at the cheapest price. And the vendor wants to provide great service, but also they have to be in a position to be able to make a revenue and make their profits also. So as you bring sourcing and you bring the legal team into the equation, it gets way more complicated, and you start looking at the benefits and costs and the risk in those equations. But at the end of the day, I like to pull back the onion and say, what are we trying to accomplish? And what's the best mechanism for us to be able to do that? How do we improve our level of security and then allow it to be done in the most effective way, cost-effective way for both not only the vendor, but also the company? Because what you don't want to do is have a price so cheap that the vendor can't put their top performers on that particular client's engagement, that they can't spend the time, as John just alluded to understand my business. Because if they can't, then they're just giving me, going back to that shotgun effect, they're giving me so many false positives that I can't be successful. So when that event that I need to be focusing on comes through, it's mirrored with all of the other events that I don't need to be spending time on, and so I miss something. So you end up missing the thing that you want. So I think it always becomes a dollars and cents game, but you got to continue to pull back the onion to figure out what's important and how do I kind of get there. What I like to leverage, and not only external from a vendor perspective, but also internal. Business engagement, we throw that term around pretty loosely, right? So, but how do you drive business engagement, and what's the value proposition around it? The value proposition, it allows you to truly put better solutions in place because you understand your business better. So how do I give that knowledge and data and value to my vendor if I'm going down that path and outsourcing that component of it? Or if I have internal resources that's focused on it, how do I ensure that they have that capability? And we try to spend more time with our business partners. So if you're supporting the marketing team, right, and from an IT perspective or an IT security perspective, how do I carve out time so I'm spending time with my with my business partners? One of my best lessons learned from my life back in the GE days was if you think you're really good from a security perspective, or you think you're really good from an IT perspective, go spend time with your business partner. They'll tell you everything that you did wrong when you delivered that particular tool. They'll tell you how to use it today versus how you built it. They'll tell you all of the great capabilities, the features that you built, they took time to build into that particular tool that they don't even use. So all of that means to me is we're not spending from an IT and IT security and a risk management perspective, we're not spending the appropriate amount of time to understand what the true needs are from a business perspective and building that capability and only that capability into our tool.
What a great response. So John, when you look at Gary's response here, what comes to mind as the next set of steps which you would take besides getting the actionable intelligence to really make sense of this whole intervention in terms of security prevention or security breach prevention as well as response?
It's going to be that continued engagement with the business, to Gary's point. As businesses understand business risk, they understand operational risk. Security risks is still fairly new. Yes, we've been facing breaches for the last 15, 20 years, but CISOs have only been at that top level to maybe the last 8 to 10 years, security risk is still very new. And so it's going to be that constant education of your business focused on understanding security risks and how these tools help reduce security risk, which is inevitably helping them reduce their business risk. And we're just going to have to keep having those conversations and keep educating them until it becomes very much ingrained in everything they do from a business perspective. They ingrain in operation through every aspect of their business. Security now has to be ingrained in every aspect of their business.
So Gary, given the solutions available and whatever the current state may be, do you think as a leader, have you been able to get your team to use the security, intelligence, and analytics solutions and processes, and then also been able to harness the intelligence that it is producing or the actionable intelligence that it's producing? Where do you think we may be missing the mark, or where you feel, I wish we could? What's your wish list, if you will, in that context?
In that context, I got a huge wish list. I would say we're in that if you think about it from a maturity perspective, we are not at the optimal level. We're not at that 5 level from a maturity perspective. We're in that 3.5 to 4 level. That being said, if you have to determine what is adequate for your company, for your industry, for your maturity of your business, for what's going on from a business process perspective, are you in an acquisition mode? Are you divesting of different companies? Are you looking at new markets? Are you growing? Or is it contrasting? Right? All of those factor into what may be important at that particular time from a tools and the capability for the business and for the security organization to fit. So I would say we are leveraging the data. There's way more data than we can get to every day to look at, but we're looking at the most important things today. And I think the other component is it's a model that's changing. Right. So our business model is changing. Demands on them from a customer perspective is changing. The things that we're doing today, we weren't thinking about necessarily a year ago or 2 years ago. So the closer we get to a higher level of maturity, we end up taking 3 steps back because now we learn more that we didn't know before and our business changes. So 3 months, 6 months from now, we'll be doing dramatically different things than we weren't doing today. So therefore, we get better and we get worse all at the same time.
So, John, if I had to offer you an option to go out and pick the best of breed solutions, which will provide you, and that solutions could be built internally, or you go outside to a solution provider, or you go to MSSP, what would be a healthy portfolio you will develop in order for you to achieve that desired end state?
Well, I tend to lean toward, for my company, not all companies are the same. For my company, I tend to lean towards a managed security service provider that provides the basic tools, the basic analytics, provide them some domain knowledge, and then build some of the expertise in-house to be able to really leverage the tools. But at the same time, I'd also want to look at somebody who has a human interaction, engages with some of these groups on the dark web to infiltrate, understand where they're coming from, what their campaigns are, so that I can take that human capital and apply it to the technical capital that I just got and really get a better risk picture. And then it's engagement with the business leaders so that they understand the data that I'm providing them to say, these are the threats to the business. You may have to look at changes to some of the business processes you have. You may have to rethink some of the business opportunities you're getting into, or at the very least, just make sure you're factoring in those threats into whatever strategies you're moving forward.
So, John, your response is basically assuming that let's see who can do the best they can versus marching everyone towards a desired state, which is set in stone. Do we have to continue to live with this fact as if we were weathermen to say we will predict weather in a certain fashion? If it doesn't happen, we still don't lose our job.
Risk management is all about prediction, right? It's not much better of a science than weather forecasting is. We try to make the best guesses we can. The better data, shouldn't say the more data. The better data we have, I think the better guesses we will make. And then you look at a hurricane prediction, when it's days away from you, they have no idea where it's really going to go. A couple days out, they have much better data that's telling them pretty much where they think the storm is going to go. So it's going to be the same way in our business. As we get better data, we'll make better predictions. It's never going to be perfect, and we're still going to be on the hot seat for them. But at least we have the comfort of knowing we had better data to provide our business leaders better information on how to make decisions.
Well said. So let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. So Gary, when we come back, we should actually see if security intelligence and analytics solutions are primarily to prematurely or proactively, not prematurely, proactively detect what may be going on versus making you even more responsive. So is that only contributing towards the being proactive, or is there a possibility for it to make us better at responding to the threat so that you're looking at the whole security activity portfolio and then apply this whole security intelligence and analytics set of solutions? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio. Voice America Business Network.
HP is proud to sponsor this program. Find out how the HP as a service solution for SAP HANA can help you gain instant, impactful business results without capital investment by logging on to HP.com. Transform information into intelligence and a competitive advantage with a full spectrum of SAP HANA products and services from HP, a global SAP hosting partner. When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network. You are listening to CIO Talk Radio with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free at 1-866-472-5790. That number again is 1-866-472-5790. Now, back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So Gary, we can buy or develop solutions related to security intelligence and analytics. Is that primarily for prevention or also for reaction to those threats or the breaches when they happen?
Yeah, if you listen to some of the vendors, they'll talk a little bit about it being a preventive tool. These are the things that it can stop. These are the things we can help you stop before it happens. I contend that it's just the opposite, right? Again, we won't be able to stop everything. Things will come through our environments and through our protections that we put in place. I look at it as a tool that gives me a capability to focus and react more appropriately. So as we talked about is how do I know something's happened, right? And then be able to react to it appropriately with the right speed and intensity to recover our environment. But I think it's a balance that we've had over the last several years of looking for that perfect solution, that perfect tool that's going to prevent everything from ever getting into our environment. And I contend there is no perfect security and there's no perfect tool out there that's going to do everything.
So if I were to go back to you, John, and ask you this question about whether you are using other tools, of course, and you may even deploy MSP, MSSP, and these other security intelligence and analytics solutions, what type of readiness do you need or preparatory work that you need at an organizational level before you can take them on and really make best use of them?
So actually, if I'd like to add on to Gary's comment, I think the tool can be used both for react and prevent, but in this way. If I have similar services running within my company and I have something happen with one of the services. So to Gary's point, I'm reacting to an incident that occurred. I can still take that data and say, wait a minute, I have two other services in my company that is the same kind of services. Well, let me go look at those and make sure I've got the right defenses in place before something does happen. So potentially I am using that as a prevention, but Gary's absolutely right. You can't just market these tools as a pure prevention. It's mostly a react, it's some prevention, but then how you use the data, right, can help you determine how much am I reacting to and how much can I try to prevent? And then your question to me directly, how do I get ready for all of it? you have to come up with the right strategy. I have to understand what are the most important assets I have in the company. What are the, I hate to reuse the term, but it's a term used all over the place. What are the crown jewels? Those are the things I need to focus on. Those are the things that I need data on. Those are the things that I need the better controls over. And that's where I'm going to focus my attention. To be prepared for an MSSP, I have to have a strategy. What am I going to send them? What am I going to have them look for in the event? How are they going to understand my business so they're giving me the right event? How are they engaging me when I actually do have events that I have to action on? What other information will they be able to provide me as I'm doing my investigation? How do they fare within the industry? Are they in the top corner, or are they an up and comer? So you have to feel, at the end of the day, you have to feel that you have comfort and trust in the organization that you pick to be your managed security service provider, because you are, at the end of the day, giving them a lot of sensitive information about yourself. And you have to feel comfortable that they are going to provide you that real actionable data that you can move on, and that they will be your partner in investigating anything that happens in your organization.
Oh, that's a great point. So Gary, one is, of course, John's view of using MSSP and using them to their maximum capabilities so that we get the value. Now, we would also have quite a few companies who would not want to get that outsourced approach to security embedded within their organizations. They want to build a talent within, and talent is one of the bigger challenges with most CISOs face. So now you're talking about helping these individuals come up to speed where they can interpret data, make sense of it, and convert that into some actionable steps, and even refine the strategy related to security. Do you think such animals exist today? And what are the challenges in terms of attracting them, retaining them, and even training them? Because what you're trying to train them on, that science is literally unknown because that's ahead of the curve.
Yeah, Sanjay, I think there's a huge value in developing either from your outsourced vendor as well as internal that type of resource. One that truly understands your business, can leverage specific tools that have you focus in on where the true problems are and help you drive those right solutions. And I think one of the issues that you run into as you develop those folks is how do you continuously challenge them and how do you retain them? Because there are so few of them, they're highly sought after. So those are the guys that you have sit in a corner in dark room that does a lot of analytical stuff that you don't let anybody else know that you have them working for your organization because you don't want anybody to steal them. You don't let them go out to vendor shows and talk to anybody because you fear that they can be snatched away from you. But on the other hand, they have to be able to have those dialogues with their peers as well as with the business partners to be successful. So I think it's a tough dilemma of figuring out how do you develop them, how do you continue to engage them, challenge them, give them meaty assignments, but also keep them in that special place that only they're delivering that value for your company.
When it comes to the type of leaders that we have to develop, which is like people at your level, not everyone thinks like you, don't have all the clarity. What do you think needs to be done so that other organizations, maybe your organizations are lucky to have you as your respective leaders, right, in those organizations, but there are many who are struggling. So what's your message to the rest of the community out there who would essentially will be able to, as a result, benefit from what was discussed today, the security, intelligence, and analytics solutions, build the right type of team, and be seen as winners? Starting with you, John.
So I think the key thing is not to just jump out and buy tools, or as you put, I think earlier, shiny toys, that you have a person in-house who has a good understanding of the business level of security, they have a good understanding of the technical side of security, and that you build a good solid plan on what are you trying to protect? How are you going to protect it? And what kind of tools do you need? What kind of people do you need? What kind of services might you purchase? It's very important to have a good plan. It's very important to have a knowledgeable executive who understand the nuances of security so that they can help guide the company into executing on that plan. Because it's very easy to just go out there and spend a lot of money on a variety of tools and then end up with getting no value out of it. It becomes what we call euphemistically in the industry as shelfware. We don't want to be purchasing shelfware. So Get way too much of that on our shelves, right? yeah. So But a punchline, have a good security person in place and have a good plan in place.
All right. A short answer, Gary, from you to top it all up.
Yeah, so short answer, I don't know if I have a short answer, but I would say we've done a pretty good job from a technical perspective of developing security practitioners. We need to pick up some of those really good ones and move them out of security. Put them into the business, put them into other areas of IT so they can learn the business even further and then be able to leverage their skills from a security perspective in places that you need them throughout the business.
What a fantastic discussion today. On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you both, Gary and John, for sharing your thoughts on how organizations can perhaps leverage the security intelligence and analytics solutions, develop their team and their leadership to get to the end goal, which is to make an organization grow, innovate, but while all along manage risk. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having them. Thank you. Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
And listeners, hope you enjoyed it. Please like us on Facebook, search for CIO Talk Radio, and be sure to follow us on Twitter. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.